welcome back to Trista's Reading Room. Today we are looking at The Key to Reality by F. Ted Atchley III, and this was published on June 13th, 2023. An elite cybersecurity analyst, a desperate rebellion's best hope. Brandon thought the assignment was just another standard security assignment. Wrong. As he peels back the layers of a deepening conspiracy, he discovers everything he thought he knew about his life is a lie. And he's the only one who can save it. Exiles from another reality see Brandon's new knowledge as the key to victory over their tyrannical king and his immortal army. Pursued by both loyalists and rebels as he crosses the borders between realities, Brandon must protect his family while figuring out who to trust. Choosing well means rescuing his family and saving both worlds, but choosing poorly will empower a malevolent evil to wipe out humanity. This is a standalone novel and for ages 14 plus. There is death of a child and non-graphic violence. You can find the ebook and paperback on Amazon and the ebook on Kobo, Apple Books, Smashwords, and BarnesandNoble.com. Here's a bit about the author. You know that person who can work a random Star Wars quote into any conversation? Well, of course you do. It's Ted Atchley. F. Ted Atchley III is a writer, gamer, all-around geek and cat parent. In addition to being a speculative fiction writer, he's also a professional computer programmer based in the beautiful Charleston, South Carolina area. Whether it's words or code, he's always writing. When he's not writing or reading, he enjoys spending time with his wife and their 2 children. He also enjoys playing video games and watching the Carolina Panthers. This is what he says the inspiration for his book is. When I started on this journey, I had a dream. Perfectly expressed by Flynn Rider in the criminally underrated movie Tangled. I have a dream like you, no really, just much less touchy-feely. They mainly happen somewhere warm and sunny, on an island that I own. Tanned and rested and alone, surrounded by enormous piles of money. But I found I needed a better reason to pursue writing, even if it never became my full-time gig. It would take me years, but I found the reason. Author and speaker Alan Arnold stated my new dream, just as perfectly as Flynn had stated my first dream. To bring into the open things hidden from the time of Eden, through your gifting with the Creator. Alan Arnold. That seemed so much better, but how does it apply in a practical sense? It means I write for people who are just like me, people who think they belong on the island of misfit toys. They believe they will never measure up and never be enough. Individuals who have experienced marginalization, rejection, or neglect. They may feel like they don't have any potential, broken, purposeless, alone. My characters battle these same issues, but I found something, a truth. And understanding my relationship to that truth led me to finding love, acceptance, worth, value, meaning, and purpose. Through my stories, I seek to point my readers to this same truth, and I tear down every barrier and smash every warped philosophy that stands in the way. If you visit his website, you'll be able to get Finding the Key, a free short story prequel to The Key to Reality. And you can find Ted on his website, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Chapter 1 29/12/299, the 29th day of the 12th month, and the 299th year since the Centurion Nero Zero, CNZ. 1748. Digital Vault Security Offices, downtown Ratterchap, capital of the Caroline Commonwealth, in the United Dominion of the planet Doki Madzo. A tiny key could grant access to an entire house. Brandon recalled the mantra as he checked his client's cybersecurity defenses. With an easy project like this one, he couldn't let himself get complacent. Even a slight vulnerability in the network security would allow a hacker to break in. The clock read 1748. All day, he had taken the easiest and shortest assignments, even to the point of letting Barth take the high-profile project of demonstrating Digital Vault's capabilities by infiltrating a prospective customer's network. Oh, how he had wanted that one. But he couldn't risk not being able to leave on time. In just over an hour, he'd be watching his daughter's dance recital with his wife Amy and their son. His wife raved about their daughter's talent. Surely she could get into the exclusive Royal Ballet Academy. If only he could afford the tuition. The inter-office messaging app dinged with a request from the Director of Operations. Brandon minimized the message and lingered for a moment as the desktop wallpaper showed a picture of him posing with his wife and children. All of them had straight black hair and a brown skin tone, the latter ranging from his own light brown skin to Amy's darker brown skin, with the kids somewhere in between. Only his son had inherited his monolith eyes. He blew the picture a kiss and navigated the rows of empty cubicles and darkened halls as a sour taste filled his mouth. He couldn't miss tonight. He just couldn't. Most weeks he spent at least one night out of town at a client's site, not to mention all the nights working late at the office. It came with the job, but he had missed enough of his family's events. As he neared the director's corner office, he tried to adjust his belt, but he already had it as loose as it would go. After rummaging through garbage cans for food as a kid, he savored every meal. But his slowing metabolism as he approached 40, plus too many days at the gym missed, had him well north of his ideal weight. He untucked his polo as he entered the office. A panorama view of downtown Ratterchap filled the floor-to-ceiling window. Perhaps soon this office would be his office. Brandon Song, Director of Operations. It had a nice ring to it, though he lacked what many called executive height. He often stated his height at 5'10" or even 5'11". The minute he said 6 feet, people called him a liar to his face. Randy Cray, the current Director of Operations, motioned toward a chair, making his double chins jiggle. "I appreciate you giving Barth a shot at the Applied Payroll Dynamics Network infiltration. He gave it his all, but he just told me he's stumped." Randy brushed crumbs off his paunch. "Today's the last day we have authorization to penetrate their defenses. I need you to jump on it." Had Brandon been wearing a hat, he would have slammed it into the carpet. Instead, he rubbed his forehead. Seriously? He'd given Barth one chance to shine. The guy blew it, and Randy expected him to pick up the pieces? He had been so careful in planning his day, and Amy would be beyond angry at him if he was late. But underneath his anger at Barth, and his fear of upsetting his wife, simmered a rising guilty pleasure, like stealing candy from his kid's CNZ basket. A better man, one who didn't walk around with a perpetual question mark over his head, wouldn't have been tempted to say yes, even though he never verbalized it, even if no one else knew or even cared. The question haunted him. Do I have what it takes? Will I come through? There was really only one way to answer that question. He had to test himself. He must, with reckless abandon, throw himself into the gaping jaws of the beast, invite it to unleash its wrath on him, and wait for the answer. Brandon ran a hand through his black hair. No. For once, he would do the right thing. "I'd love to help, but I have to leave for my daughter's dance recital." Randy leaned back. "Family first, I always say." Brandon fought to keep his expression neutral. His foster father had taught him logos, pathos, and ethos. It meant your words, your beliefs, and your actions needed to align. For Randy, family first was just logos. Nothing but empty words. "But if you'll bail Barth out," Randy continued, "how about I take you off travel rotation for the next 2 months? Go to every recital or whatever else your kiddos are doing." Brandon adjusted his glasses. Randy had gone straight to his root directory. He hated the time away, but his own mother would be so proud of him. He was a good father she had pleaded with him to be. His children had the financial security he never had bouncing around in the foster system after she died. "I'd love that." Randy steepled his hands. "Get into my ADP's network. It's a done deal, but it must be tonight. We only have authorization to probe their network until midnight." Brandon shifted in the chair. The hum of the air conditioner provided the only sounds to mark the seconds ticking away. If he could find something in the next 20 minutes, he might not be there right as the curtain opened, but he could still make the recital. Sure, APD's network had stymied Barth, but Barth wasn't as good as he was. Nobody on the Digital Vault team was. Still, he needed one more thing if he was going to justify taking the risk. Randy got a large bonus every time he landed a new client. Half of it would more than cover tuition at the Royal Ballet Academy. "If I get us in, I want 50% of the new client bonus." Randy glanced at his computer screen and frowned. "You're my only shot at getting that bonus. 50% of something is better than 100% of nothing. Randy reached out his hand. Brandon imagined the look on his little girl's face when he told her she could go to the Royal Ballet Academy. It would be like CNZ morning. No, it would be better. Brandon grabbed Randy's hand and shook. All right, I'm on the case. I'll get you results. Randy rubbed his hands together. That's what I wanted to hear. As he left Randy's office, Brandon fought the usual heaviness that came whenever he promised results. No matter how many times he had come through before, it never went away. The question demanded an answer again and again. He had to deliver. He texted his wife as he hurried back to his desk, dodging the cleaning crew. Brandon. Running late, sorry. Amy. Seriously? Think you'll make it? Brandon. I should. Is she in the first few acts? Amy. I'm backstage getting her ready. No programs. Brandon. Be there ASAP. At his desk, Brandon slid his hand along the edge of his laptop, which was loaded with all his best security tools, and slipped his ID badge into the card reader to log in. He checked the notes in the customer database. Barth had run all the standard vulnerability scans, 0-day, web applications, Wi-Fi, and network, and got nothing. Whoever had designed APD's defenses knew what they were doing. To double-check, Brandon launched his port scanner. Ports were like virtual doorways into a computer. The port scanner would show Brandon which of the virtual doors had locks or security cameras and which ones didn't. He found most of the doors locked, but APD had left a couple open to allow for telework. Still, without a valid username or password, he wouldn't get far. Barth had hit the same roadblock, but something wasn't right. He checked his watch. 18:25. Opening curtain was in 35 minutes. Think. Work the problem. He clicked the X to close the port scanner program. If he couldn't pick the lock, maybe he could trick someone inside APD to open the door. He scanned the reconnaissance Barth had put together. Often the greatest vulnerability of any system was its meatware, the users. Human operators. He scanned the list of employees and stopped when he reached the name of their night system analyst, Quentin Douglas. Douglas ran the backups and did the overnight maintenance, and so would have an account with access to the servers. With no one around to hear, Brandon performed an evil villain laugh. Sure, it was silly, but his job was to show APD how the bad guys would attack their network. He had to think like the bad guys. No rules, no ethics. If he found a vulnerability, it was ADP's fault for not having a countermeasure in place. The laugh helped him get into character. A quick social media search for Douglas's page with post after post about barbecue competitions, along with pictures of him holding large trophies. This guy knew his barbecue. That passion would be Brandon's tiny key. A post about a spring barbecue competition shone like a lighthouse. Brandon created an email to ADP, asking Douglas to verify some information and adjusted it to make it look like it was from the person running the contest. Attached to the email was an electronic copy of an entry form with some added computer code that would install on Douglas's computer after he opened it. The code would record login attempts, and the next time Douglas logged in, the program would send Brandon his username and password. Brandon fired off the email and checked the clock. 18:40. He cursed. It never ceased to amaze him how time evaporated while he worked. His phone buzzed again. Amy wanted an update. The phishing email lurked on Douglas's computer, and since Randy said they had until midnight, Brandon could check it after the recital. If Douglas didn't take the bait, Brandon would figure something else out after the kids were asleep. Regardless, it would mean a long night in the home office, but that wouldn't be out of the ordinary. He typed out a quick, "On my way," to Amy and sprinted to the elevators. Maybe Melanie's dance group would be the later part of the show. 18:50. Brandon pulled out of the parking garage and wove through the downtown streets. He loved his old off-roader, even though it lacked all the modern conveniences. It was rugged, a survivor, just like he was. With a liberal interpretation of the speed limits, he'd still make it by 1905 and not miss a thing. 18:55. Brandon merged onto M85 and checked his phone. ETA, 15 minutes. He pushed the gas pedal to the floor. No way he was missing this. 1908. The sign from his exit loomed ahead. If Melanie wasn't in the first few acts, he'd make it. As he raced through an underpass, a car on the shoulder turned on its lights. A moment later, a siren filled the air and blue lights illuminated the interior of the off-roader. Brandon swallowed hard. Maybe the public order enforcer was after someone else. He slowed and pulled the off-roader onto the shoulder. The enforcer's car followed. He cursed. After the enforcer took his license and registration, Brandon sent a text to Amy. Melanie's group was scheduled for the middle of the show. He still had a shot. The minutes crawled by. Brandon wanted nothing more than to peel out and get to the recital. Finally, the enforcer returned. He handed Brandon his license and registration, along with a ticket for going 90 and a 70. The enforcer shone his high-powered flashlight around the interior of the off-roader. "You had quite the childhood, Mr. Song." Brandon squeezed the steering wheel. How dare this guy bring up his juvie record? He wasn't that scared kid any longer. He had worked so hard to avoid becoming a statistic, despite his father abandoning him at birth and his mother dying of cancer when he was 10. Sure, he ran away from every foster home and had a couple of B's and E's on his record. But after Edgar took him in, everything changed. Edgar showed him how to take control of his own life. He wouldn't be a victim ever again. Now he had it all. A beautiful wife, a couple of kids, and a cozy house in the suburbs. Somehow, it still wasn't enough to answer the question. Soon enough, he'd add Director of Operations. Then he'd really have it all. Then, maybe, he'd finally know he was enough. "Those days are long past, officer." Brandon paused. "Is there a problem?" The enforcer stopped his search. "You're listed as a known associate of the fugitive Edgar Vega. When was the last time you had any contact with him?" "Oh, that again?" The officer stared at him. Brandon knew the drill. He had lost count of how many detectives had interviewed him after Edgar's escape. Brandon had refused to believe it when the public enforcers arrested Edgar for dealing drugs out of his pawn shop. Even with a 1-year-old Melanie at home and the demands of his new IT career, Brandon poured countless hours into helping Edgar's defense team. But he wasn't smart enough or clever enough to prove Edgar's innocence. The Commonwealth had witnesses, bank records, and physical evidence of the drugs found in the back room of the pawn shop. He'd never stopped believing in Edgar's innocence, but he truly had nothing to do with Edgar's escape. "I visited him at the prison on 7/10/295. "A week before he broke out. And you're sure you've had no contact since?" Brandon turned his head to face the officer. What was with this guy's deal? Why was he digging so hard on a 4-year-old cold case? "It's a matter of public record that I was cleared of any suspicion that I aided him in his escape. And no, I've not had any contact with Edgar since." Brandon remained the authorities' best hope of ever finding Edgar, his foster father in every way but the paperwork. Edgar's love and mentorship was the reason Brandon hadn't ended up a statistic. Everything Brandon had and the man Brandon was, he owed to Edgar. Wherever Edgar was, he was too smart to risk contact. Despite that, part of Brandon wished he would. Just to hear his voice again, to feel Edgar's bear hug around him, or just sit on the couch together and cheer on their beloved Carolina Copperheads hockey team once again. "If he contacts you..." Brandon let out a calming breath. "I'm aware of my responsibilities, officer." The enforcer walked away. 1940. Brandon parked the off-roader at Ponder Auditorium. He jumped out and sprinted for the building. He raced through the hallways and threw open the double doors of the main auditorium as gentle applause filled the air. Melanie's group pranced toward the side of the stage. She stopped and locked eyes with him. Her shoulders slumped, and she gave a heavy sigh as she followed her troupe off the stage. And that's it for today. If you want to read more of the story, make sure to check it out online and follow Ted. Have a great day!